Yes,
Are
I
you
can
guys
see
able to
it.
see my
I
screen?
can see. Uh-huh. I can see it.
Okay, fine. Uh, what about others? City, Klilu? You guys can
Yes,
see?
I can see it.
Okay, fine. Uh, okay, then I'll start quickly. One. Okay. Now, till yesterday, what we discussed is we had made all the relationships and we had discussed all the concepts of one to many, many to many, and all those things, right? Now, today, we would be discussing about the DAX. So, first of all, I'll give you the introduction to DAX and then discuss about the calculated columns and measures and what are the differences between both. And if time permits, few DAX functions also, right? So the first thing is, what is DAX? So DAX is basically data analysis expression. This is a language, formula language that drives Power BI. Basically, what does that mean is in Power BI, the language that is used, or the language that is inbuilt, is data. That formula language, we call it as DAX, which is data analysis expression, DAX, DAX, right? Now, we have two types of DAX that is there. One, we call it as calculated columns, and the other is measures. Now, what is calculated columns? What is measures? So, whenever calculated column you will create, that will live inside the table. That means whichever calculated column you will create in any of the table, that column will you will be able to see in the table. Okay, so let's say I create one calculated column under calendar lookup. Okay, so that column, right now it's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven column. So that column, eighth column, whichever column you will create, you will be able to see in the table itself. So then here it will be eight columns, right? Uh, while when talking about the measures, that measure won't be available in the visual. Like you won't be able to see measure in the visual. It doesn't reside inside the table. Visual will be used in sorry, measures will be used in visuals, right? It will not reside under any of the table. So whenever you will create any visualization, whether it's uh, uh, anything, bar graph, or right now we are in matrix or tabular format, anything, it will be used in the visualization itself. That particular calculated or the measure that you have, it will not appear in the table. Okay, so now when talking about calculated columns, uh, what happens is I'll talk about like few pointers about the calculated column, and then I'll show you like how it works. Okay, so calculated column is something where you can add new formula. This calculated column allows you to add new formula based column to the tables. Let's say I'll give you a demo also. So let's say I am in currently sales table. Okay, and you remember we had discussed something called conditional column in the query editor. So in the query editor, if you see, there is one option of conditional column wherein you can uh, write any condition, and that conditional column will start appearing inside the table. So similar to that, instead of using conditional column, we can write DAX also. Like there are multiple approach to do the same thing, right? So let's say I want to create a column in which is quantity type, similar column that we had created earlier, right, in one of the data sets, sales 2017 data set, right, in which we had created that quantity type using conditional column. The same column I will try to create in the AW sales using the calculated column. Okay, so now what how you can create calculated column? You can go to the sales table in whichever table you want to actually create, and then you can right click, and you can right click on the table name also, or you can right click on any of the column. It will work the same way, right? So you will see there are three things over here. One is new measure, second is new column, and third is new quick measure. So whenever you want to create a calculated column, you have to pick new column, right? So I have picked new column. So as soon as you hit new column, you will get a formula bar at the top, here at the top. In here, what you can write formula of the calculated column, like whatever formula you want to write, that formula we will discuss. But this is a formula bar where you can write in detail, we can discuss. So basically what you have to write here, let's say I want to create a quantity type. So I will give the column name. So the first thing you need to write in the DAX expression is the column name, the column that you are creating, right? We are creating a new column here. So that column name I want to give as quantity type. So I'll give quantity type like this here, then equal to, and then you have to write the formula. Okay, any formula you can write. In here what I will write is, if order quantity is greater than 1, then multiple items, else single item, right? So this is the after equal to, you have to write the formula. So for formula, I'm using, for this one I'm using if function. So there is a function which is inbuilt in the Power BI, which is called if. So this how this if function works. So as soon as you write your function, whatever function you are using, and start with a bracket, it will, there will be one pop-up that will come, wherein it will write like what is the syntax of that formula, right? So what it is giving me, it is giving me if, then logical test comma result if true comma result if false, which means the first argument, we call these as argument. Each of these uh, values that you see here, logical test, so we call that as argument. Result if true, that is also called an argument. Argument means something that you give to this formula, which will be uh, basically that will run in the backend and give you the final result. So in the logical test, what you will put, you will put order quantity greater than 1. We want to check if the order quantity is this column, right, is greater than 1. So how it works is, if you write, let's say order here, 1 minute, it is not taking, is it? AW sales and then order quantity, right? Yeah. So you can't directly write order quantity, okay? The way this syntax works is, it has to be the table name first, from which table it is coming, order quantity. So order quantity column is coming from AW sales table. So that's why this is the syntax, AW sales and then order quantity. You don't have to write anything. As soon as you will write AW sales or something or sales, it will pop up. So I will show you. I have not written anything. As soon as I wrote sales, it it automatically gave me all the options, like what all the columns are available in the sales, right? And I know that under sales table, under bracket, these are the columns, basically fields that is there in the sales table. I want to pick order quantity table, order quantity field, sorry. So I will select this order quantity, and if this order quantity is greater than 1, okay, so this is my argument. Then what next? The first argument, the logical test. If order quantity is greater than 1, then uh, comma, what I need to write? I need to write result if true, which means if it is greater than 1, then what I want to tell, that it is multiple items. So I will write multiple items. Okay, and then comma, what is the third argument? Result if false. That means if this is not multiple items, then what? If the order quantity is not greater than one, then what will appear in the cells? So it will be single item. You have to close the bracket. So every time you write this, this should be under the inverted comma, like the parenthesis. Sorry, not parenthesis. This is in what do we call it as under the inverted commas or something, right? What do we call it as? Uh, so we have to write it as multiple item and single item, right? And then click enter. So that thing will start appearing over here. So since this is a calculated column, this will appear into your table. So till now you had only till order quantity, and now we have quantity type, in which we have single item and multiple items, right? So this is how you will create any of the tax calculated column. So any question till now? Under quantity type, if you will see, you will have two options: multiple items and single item. So multiple, if you select, let's say, multiple item, it will show you order quantity greater than one. And if you select single item, it will show order quantity equal to one, right? So we are done with the one of the calculated column. So any question till now, or is it clear?
So, do you have any sort of reference sheets, or I don't know, for lack of a better word, maybe like a cheat sheet that we can use? Because I don't know when to put the quotation marks or single quotations. That
Whenever there is text that you will write, you have to put this uh, quote, double quote.
okay? Do you have any reference sheets that you can share with us? Just to
Right
help
now,
us.
I don't have, but I'll try to create one for you guys and then send it to you. Like, what exactly do you want?
Again, I don't know just when to put like single quote, um, and just like regular quotation marks like this. I don't know when to use that. So you just said whenever we're working with texts, but
Yes.
it's always good to have it because I'll probably forget whenever I'm writing something, and then it just takes longer, to do the googling it up and all that stuff. So it would be helpful if you have anything that can help us. But
Okay. Uh, okay, fine. I'll s- I'll check and send it to you. But usually, wherever you will write text or anything, always you have to put it in inverted comma, right? This is
oh
like
yeah, like the
the
commas and
quotation.
stuff, like the double comma, and then that the square commas, like one of those. I don't know. I mean, not the comma, but like yeah, the the brackets. But I don't know what it's called. But the other one that was square ones.
Okay, parenthesis we call it as. So I think what we can do is when we will discuss multiple DAX functions, right? So I'll send you the list of DAX functions and how it works. So maybe that will help. Uh,
Okay.
uh, what is the syntax and how do you use? So maybe once you guys look into it, you will get familiarized to basically DAX functions or
Yeah.
how to write calculated columns or measures. So then gradually you will get to know when to put the inverted commas, when not to put. Right, so there is no hard and fast, no such rules. It depends on like where what you are writing. So usually in the functions that we write, usually wherever we write any text thing, we put it in inverted commas. But right now you will not basically understand everything because uh, uh, if you see like multiple functions, if we are writing multiple functions and see like how it is working, so then you will get a feel of like what should be the actual syntax. And anytime you can actually Google in Google and see like what is the syntax, they will actually mention. So if you have any confusion, you can Google like what is the syntax, and they will show you like how to write, right? So because there is no uh, set 5 or 6 functions or 5 or 6 things that you need to remember. You just need to remember the how to write the expression, right? So first is your column name, then you have equal to, and then you have to write the function. Now instead of, if I were to use some other function, then the syntax would be different, and not sure like whether in that case where to use inverted commas. So that is not a fixed rule which I can write for you guys in the 3 4 steps, right? So what I can do is I can discuss as many as a DAX function so that you know like what is the syntax and how to write it. Is
Okay,
that
so
clear?
when do we use single quotations? Is it for numbers, numerical values?
Which one?
The single quotes, like single quotation mark?
Single quotation and double quotation both are same, like both we use for the text and we don't use for numerical thing. I'll discuss all these as soon as we start discussing the DAX function. So don't worry about that, like when to put single and double. But if you are putting anything under quotation, then that means it's a text column. Well, I mean text values that will come like this.
And so the
Can you give me,
single too?
sorry?
Single quotes is the same thing? I thought it was for something different.
No, single quote is also the same thing. Let me try giving single quote over here. I'm not sure if it will work here or not, but in few things like in Excel or something, it will work as single quote. Here it doesn't work single quote, so I don't know. We will not use single quote anytime. So it depends on the which kind of basically tool you are using. Can you give me 1 minute? Somebody is outside the door. I'll quickly come. Yeah, I'm back. Okay, yeah. So in this case, single quotation is not working, but if you use in some other tool, let's say in Excel or something, so in that case you will use single quotation. That should work, right? So single quotation or double quotation both are used for the text column in the formulas. It depends which kind of tool is using. Somewhere it's used single quote, somewhere it's used double quote. But for Power BI, I think single quotation doesn't work. Wherever you want to specify the text values, you have to put it in double quotation.
Okay, good. Thank you.
No problem. Any more questions? Okay, so basically what we are seeing here is uh, the calculated column refer to the entire table, and so it's not something and it's wherein all the values are calculated for each rows, right? So in calculated column, what happens is it generate values for each row, and this is visible within the table, right? And so what I mean by this is calculated column understand row context, meaning that it will see info in each row that we have calculated, and this is not used for aggregation, right? So for wherever aggregation happens, by aggregation I mean sum, average, count, all those things, right? So wherever aggregation happens, we use measures. So I'll show you if you would have used calculated column in aggregation, what will happen. So let me again create one calculated column, right click, new column, and then sorry, not new column, measures, sorry, column only, new column, and then I want to do aggregation, na? So I'll do a new column and then I'll write, let's say, total quantity. Okay, total quantity, and here I have applied formula as sum. Let's say sum is a function, uh, and I want to sum. Under sum, you see we have to pass only one argument, column name. So which column do you want to do summation? So I did, let me do it for order quantity. So if I write order, it will give me multiple options like order date, order line item, order. It will automatically start showing everything that it starts with the order or have order under the column. So I will pick order quantity from here, close the bracket, hit enter. So what will happen if you see, since this is a calculated column, it will appear in the table. And since we have used aggregation function, so aggregation function, as I mentioned, is uh, aggregation function means it will aggregate, or it will uh, include all the values as and give you one value, right? It will look into all the rows, it will appear, or it will be applied on all the rows in one go and give you one value. So that's what is happening right now. Here we have used aggregation summation for calculating total quantity, right? This is a aggregation function. So as soon as we use summation and then put order quantity inside this, what happened, it has summed up the total order quantity, right? The total order quantity will be 84174. So that's why the answer of this total quantity came as 84174, but it started appearing in each of these rows because we have used calculated column instead of measures. In this case, wherever you will use any aggregation function like sum, average, count, average x, count distinct, all those things, you have to use measures and you can't use calculated column. Otherwise, it will start repeating its value in each of the rows, which is not correct. You have to use the aggregation function in measures, and you have to use uh, uh, conditional functions or all those things like if, uh, and I'll talk about few more in calculated columns. So right now this is not correct, aggregation function is not correct here, and I'll delete this total quantity. So did you guys understand like what happened right now here?
Actually, I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, go ahead, ask me questions.
So you said, whenever we use aggregation, we have to use calculated measure, but you said you're adding a calculated column. I don't know. I'm a little bit lost. Can you repeat the same concept that you were just going over?
Sure. So see, there are two things. One is calculated columns and one is measure, right?
Mm-hmm.
In calculated columns, what happens? The first difference is the calculated columns will appear in the table, in the
Mm-hmm.
data set itself, right? As you are seeing here, quantity type, this is a calculated column, right? Now, the measures, actual measures that I'm talking about will not be appearing inside the table, right? It is used in the visualization itself. Since measures, this total quantity is measure, and for measure, we use aggregation function, right? Now what happens is here, this total quantity, I have created calculated column. In calculated column, I have taken the aggregation function which we use for measures, right? So what happened? It is giving me same record, like same numbers, same values are repeating in each cells. Why? Because in calculated column we can't use aggregation. That will not give you correct result. Whenever you are using aggregation function, you have to use in measures and not the calculated column. That is the flaw here. That is the wrong thing that we have done here. So let me actually write it somewhere, so then you will understand. Uh, so it's very, I think maybe for the first time it's confusing, but
Mhm.
you guys will understand this. Don't worry. 1 minute. Okay. So see, one is called calculated column. Calculated column. Okay. And the other is called measures. Calculated column in measure is used for aggregation. This is used for aggregation. By aggregation I mean you will use functions like sum, average. Right now writing few, but there are multiple aggregation functions, right? These are the aggregation functions. Sum, average, count, all these are aggregation functions that you have to use under while creating measure, right? Right click and then do measure. So then this will work. Now, so what does this sum function does? Let's say I have data. Let me create few data set. I have data having product ID and quantity. Okay. And I have, let's say, product ID 1, 2, 3 and quantity 10, 20, 30. I will delete these column. So what does sum do? If I do sum of quantity, delete. Okay, so let's say I write somewhere, let's say first tell me if I write sum and quantity like this, what it will give me. That means I am giving uh,
I'm gonna add
the condition.
everything.
Sorry.
It's going to add all of the quantities inside the
It's going
quantity
to add
column.
me all of these quantities, right? So I'm doing summation of quantity column. So it will give me 10 plus 20 plus 30, which is 60, right?
Mhm.
So the answer of sum of quantity is 60. Now what happens if you do it in calculated column, right? Let's say I create one more column here. If I create sum of quantity over here, let's say this is sum of quantity. So what will happen if I do it, if I select calculated column and then write sum of quantity, which we had done. So what will happen? Those 60, yeah, if this is sum of quantity, let's say. So those 60 will repeat in each row. Why? If I had created calculated column, the concept of calculated column is this will appear in the table. This appears in the table. Okay, first thing. And second thing is uh, row by row calculation. So the calculation will happen for each row, right? For each row, it will uh, do the calculation. Like for each row, it will generate the value. But since the sum of quantity is only one value, right? So that's why 60 is repeating in each of the rows if I do calculated column. And hence that is not correct. In the case of summation function or aggregation function, you need to create measure instead of calculated column. If you create calculated column and use all the aggregation function, that will give me wrong result. Wrong result means I don't want this. Why would I want 60, 60, 60 in each of the rows for now, right? So that is the difference. If I would have to create sum of quantity, what I will do, I will, instead of creating sum of quantity or total quantity here, in this case, like I have named the column as total quantity, I would have created, right click and created a measure. And in the measure, what I would have done is I would have written total quantity and then sum of order quantity. So in this case, what will happen is, okay, total quantity already exists. For now, I will give total quantity 1. So in this case, what will happen? See, the total quantity 1 is not appearing in the table. Why? Because total quantity 1 is measure. That is not a calculated column, right? And now this total quantity 1 you can use in the visualization. You can use under visualization. Let's say I want to create one visualization, which is a table in which I want to have total quantity 1, basically this one in values 84174, and then I want to look this by product. Let's say product category, not oh, this is key. So instead of this, product lookup, let's say, where is product name? Yeah, that's it. So this is, so then this is correct, right? Why? Because for each of the product, how many total quantities are available, right? How many total quantities are sold? That is the total quantity in sales table. So it shows that for first bike stand 234 has been sold, logo cap 4151 has been sold. Instead, if we would have taken total quantity over here and not total quantity 1, this is like very weird number, right? Because what is happening is in total quantity we have the wrong number. 84174 is repeating in each of the rows. So it is automatically doing summation of all those rows. So this is not correct. Total quantity is not correct. Whenever we have to do summation, we need to create a measure and not the calculated column. Is it clear?
Yeah, it is.
Very clear.
Okay. So you guys understand, right? When to use summation or aggregation. Whenever you will use summation or aggregation function, you have to create measure like we did for total quantity 1. And whenever you need to create a column in which like that will be used in some filtration or something, or conditional column, then you have to create calculated column. Like whenever you have to have values in each rows, you want to see values in each rows and you want that column to exist in the table itself, you will create calculated column. But if you want something which as a numerical value, like you want some aggregated values, then you have to create measures instead of calculated columns, right?
Mhm.
I have
So in this case, total quantity, I will delete this because this is not correct.
a question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So calculated column and add column is the same. Okay.
Calculated column and add column. Uh, okay, fine. Yeah, add column is the same. Add column you are asking from the query editor, is it?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Both are same. Both are not same actually. The the output will be, so in add column what happens is, under add column you have multiple options, so one new column will be added, right? Under a calculated column what happens is, again one new column will be added. But in calculated column you have to write the DAX expression by your own. In add column you have all the options out there in that home tab, and then in add column tab you can select the option, and then that value will appear over here, right? So just the difference between add column and calculated column is that in calculated column you have to write DAX, the expression on your own. In add column it is like automatic, you will select some option and then those will be applied in each rows. But both are same. In both add column and calculated column you will have like one column in which you will get values in each rows.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more question?
Um, so that part, the calculated column gives you a different output than the add column.
No, it will give you the same output. It will give you the same output if you do. So let's say this one, right? The quantity type. So we had done that. Let me go to query editor and show you that. Okay, let's say I'm in sales table, right? Here we have order quantity, right? Uh, so we had created a column which is called in which we
Order
had single item and double item, right? So what was the column name?
order
Quantity
quantity.
type, right? So we had created quantity type, and that was appearing in here in the appearing in that table, right? Sales table in your data view. Now, if you do add column and do conditional column, then also one column will be created over here, which is the quantity type. And you can do the same way. Let's say I do add column and conditional column, and I do here I write quantity type and give the same thing. If order quantity is greater than or equal to 1, then multiple items, add clause. If order quantity, or we don't need to add actually, else single item, or let me write it. If order quantity is equal to 1, then single item, else other. Okay. So what I have done is I have created a new column. Under add column, I have used conditional column, and I am writing this quantity type and then giving all this formula if and else if statement, like if function that we used in DAX expression, right? And then uh, hitting OK. So again, if you see here also you are getting why is it looks like I have written some wrong formula. Oh, this is greater than 1, not equal to. Yeah. So again here I am seeing that the same thing, quantity type, single item, and everything is coming over here, right? So you could have done that using conditional column also, both are the same. So if you go to add column and use conditional column and then write this, in this case, quantity type, the values that you are getting, you will get the same value if you write uh, a DAX expression under calculated column, right? So there is no fixed way to do things in Power BI, right? Either you could have done it through conditional column, or you can do it through calculated column. It's up to you. right? But what happens is using DAX functions is much easier, right? In this case, you have this conditional column. It might happen that later on, like after doing all the query editing part and everything, you realize that you missed something, right? So you could have done it there only, but the purpose is same, and the value that you will get by using conditional column or by using DAX calculated column, it will be same. There will be no change. You could do it either ways. There are multiple ways to do the same thing in Power BI. Is it clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. So for now, I will remove this added conditional column because we have already created it using DAX, and then I'll close this. Okay. Okay. So now what we will discuss is, yeah, now there are two ways in which you can add actually column or measures, right? One is using modeling view, and if you see, if let's say I go to data view, and here you have all these options, column tools. Okay. Okay, and if I come here, so you see at the top, you have home, insert, modeling, view, and help. Under modeling, if you click, there is something called new column and new table, and quick measure and new measure, right? These are the four things under calculations you see. So these new measure and new column is the same thing that we discussed just now. New column is calculated column and new measure is measure that you want to create, right? So what happens, there are two ways in which you can create measure or column. Either you select measure from here only, or you select a table and then right click and do it. But the difference is, if you select the measure from here, what it will do, whenever you will insert column or measure using a modeling tab, it will be assigned to whichever table is currently selected, right? If we have not selected any table, then that particular measure will be created in the first table by default. So let's say I select new measure from here. What will happen? You see the measure has been created over here under calendar lookup, because this was the first table we had, right? This is the first table we had. So the measure got created here. If I click on modeling and click on measure, the measure will be created over here in the first table by default, right? And then you have to write the formulas. But if we don't want to do like that, then what you have to do is, the best way is to just go on the table in which you want to create measure, and then right click and do the measure, because otherwise it won't make sense. Let's say just now we created quantity type or something. Why would we want to create quantity type here under calendar lookup? That won't make sense, because under calendar lookup we have all the columns related to dates, related to calendar. So that's why the correct thing, or the correct approach is to use or select the table in which you want to create calculated column and measure, and then right click and select new measure or new column, whichever you want to calculate. Is it clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, so now what I will do is, let's say, let me actually discuss about the implicit and explicit uh, function. Okay, so there are two things: implicit measures and explicit measures. So first thing first, did you guys understand what is measure and what is calculated column? Is that
Yes.
clear? Like what is calculated column and what is measure? Are you
Yes.
comfortable with like what is calculated column and what is measure and how it works?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you guys have any doubt, can you please like ask me questions, whatever is going in your head, because this is very important concept. Like if it is not clear, I can again discuss. That should not be a problem. I know this is a little bit tough concept, but this is very important because the later on, before creating any visualization, we will mostly work with measures and calculated columns. So that's why, like, if it's not clear, please ask questions.
So if we don't need to add a column, we just need to write the measure, right? And that's really the formula for whatever we're doing, then just work with measures. If we add columns, if we wanted to add a column onto the table that we're working with.
Yeah, so if you want to add a column, you need to either write calculated column or you can do it using the add column feature in query editor. But if you if you want to write measure, then you have to do it from here. The difference between calculated column and measure is the calculated column, either way you do it, either using add column in query editor or using DAX calculated column, that new column will appear in the table itself. But in
Right.
measure, you won't be able to see the values in the table. It will be used in the visualization as we have done here, total quantity 1.
So if we could do, why add a column? Why not just write measures, right? As much as possible. Because then again, you don't have to actually make the table longer by adding more columns. As long as you're able to write a calculated measures or just a measure, would not be more sufficient or even better to
Yeah,
do?
but the purpose of calculate column and measure is different, right? Measure you have to use for aggregation, but calculate, if you want to do row by row
Oh yeah.
operation, you have to write calculated column. You can't write measure in that case. So I can't write. We had created this thing, right? Quantity type. I can't do this quantity type using measure because I want values in each row. So the calculated
Mhm.
column works in a way in which it will look into each row and then give the output. But that doesn't happen in measure. In measure, it will look into the entire row in one go and then do the aggregation. It will apply the aggregation function, whether it's sum, average, whatever. So the purpose of calculated column and measure is entirely different. You can't actually use measure instead of calculated column. Is it clear?
Yeah. Can you give some examples or instances where we actually use um, calculated columns? I think the measure you did give already. Whenever we're using aggregation functions like summing, like summation, average, count, etc., then you use
Mm-hmm,
measures.
mm-hmm.
And then what are the instances or some examples for when we use calculated columns? Like, or
Okay.
yeah, just
Okay, so as like so just remember whenever you want to do row by row operation, like you want to have values in each row, you have to write calculated column. But I'll give you example. One example is this quantity type. First, let me remove this total quantity. This is not correct. Okay. So first is quantity type, like how it is working. It is looking into each row and looking into this value. If order quantity is greater than 1, is it greater than 1? No, then it is giving single item. Then it will go to second row and then see what is the value under order quantity. If it's 1 or greater than 1, it is 1, then it is giving single item. So this is one of the example in which you have, like, for each row you want to tag
No,
one
but
value
Yeah.
as single item or multiple
Yes,
item,
your teeth
right?
is dirty.
Let's
Even
say
I
I
can
want
see
to,
it. Didn't brush it well. Oh,
let's say I want to
I'm sorry.
actually under product lookup, I want to create one column uh, in which what I want to do is I want to uh, basically, okay, let's say I have product price, right? I want to create a discounted price again here in which I will give 20% discount, right? So then let's say I want to give 20% discount on each of the products. So how I will do? In that case, if I want to have one discount price column in which I want value in each of the row. Why? Because for each of the product, I want that discounted price. In this case, I will create calculated column and not measure. Why? Because I don't want to do any aggregation in this case. What I want, what my intent is to create a column in which for each row, I will have some value, right? So let's say I'm creating calculated column here, right? Uh, right click, new column, and I want one more discount price. Discount price. Let's say I give 20% discount price. Okay. So what I will do, I will take this product price. Okay. Product price. And I will multiply this by 0.8. What it will do, it will give like 80% value here. That means 20% is discounted. And I'll hit enter. So what will happen? For each row, that value will be created. This value has been created. And this is the 20% discounted price. So if I want to calculate for each row, any value, if I want for each row of the table, wherein like you want like row by row operation and not the entire row in one uh, as an aggregated, then you have to create calculated column.
Makes sense.
Okay, is it clear now?
Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you, Guruji.
No problem. So I will delete this for now, like because I don't need this. So now is calculated column and measure clear to you guys?
Yeah, it is to me. Thank you.
Okay. Siti, what about you, Aklilu? You are also silent. If you
Yes,
have any
clear for
questions,
me.
please ask.
It's clear for me too.
It's clear for me too.
Okay. Because it's very important concept. So yeah, you should understand what is the difference between calculated column and measure. Then only we can proceed further. So that's why I'm asking multiple times. Okay. So now s- if you guys are clear on the calculated column and measures, then we can discuss about different types of measures. So there are two types of measures. One is implicit measure and one is explicit measure. Now, what are the differences between implicit and explicit measure, right? Implicit measures are created when you drag raw numerical fields like order quantity. Okay, let's say I go to the sales table and I have a order quantity column over here, this one, right? So if I pull this raw column, raw numerical field into the values pane, here in the values pane, right? Then that will also have some aggregation, right? Let's say I pull this raw field, order quantity over here. If you see, both are giving me the same result, right? This order quantity 234, 4151, everything is same, exactly same with the total quantity one that we have created. This is a measure that we have created, this total quantity, and this is the quantity that is coming from the raw field, right? The raw order quantity column that we have. Now, what happens is as soon as you pull any numerical field into the values pane, this is the values you see here, right? As soon as you pull any of the numerical field in the values, what happens if you hit on this arrow, you see here what in the backend happens. It will either do sum, average, minimum, maximum, all these. And what are all these are the aggregation functions, right? You know that we, if we want to do any aggregation or summation or average, like any aggregated value, if we want to look at, these are the functions. So as soon as you pull any numerical field under the value section, it will automatically apply some aggregation function. That is the way the Power BI works, right? So what happened? This raw column we had pulled, and this summation has automatically applied, and hence the value that we are seeing here is matching with total quantity measure that we have created. So this order quantity, the raw field, the raw numerical field that we have pulled, this is implicit measure. This we call it as implicit measure. Why? uh, what do you mean by implicit measure? So this implicit measure means this is only accessible within the specific visualization in which it was created, and this cannot be referenced anywhere. So let's say I want to create something in other table, right? And I want to use this total quantity field. So I can't use this implicit measure, which is this order quantity, but I can use total quantity. Why? Because this is something we have created. This is explicit. We are giving command that, okay, you do summation of all the order quantities that is out there, right? So this measure that we have created, we call it as explicit measure. And the measure or the values that we see after pulling a numerical field into the values, this is also a measure, but this is implicit measure, which means you can't use this order quantity in any other formula or expression in other table. So that is the difference, and hence since it is restricted to this visualization, a particular visualization, the raw field is restricted to particular visualization, we recommend that it's better to always create a explicit measure instead of using order quantity directly over here. What I would suggest is create one measure, explicit measure, in which you write like sum of order quantity, and then pull that column. Although like total quantity one that we have created and the order quantity, by directly pulling the raw field, both are giving me the same result, but the recommended thing is to use the measures that we have created, because we can reference this measure in other formula. I will show you that, like how we can use. So this total quantity one that we have created, this can be used in other formulas also, because this is something we have created as an explicit measure. So is it clear to you guys?
I think I get it.
Okay. What about others?
Can you explain for me a little more for me?
Yes, I am Alara.
Okay. So there are two things. One is implicit measure and one is explicit measure. Implicit measure is something which is restricted to the visualization. Whichever visualization you are creating, it is restricted to that visualization. So now let's say I'm talking about the total order quantity, right? So there are two ways you can see total order quantity. One, you have order quantity, you directly drag this raw field into values. So what it will do in the backend, if you pull any numerical field to the values, it will do some kind of aggregation in the backend on its own. Power BI does it on its own. So as soon as you pull any numerical field into the value, some aggregation will apply over here. So right now it has applied summation, sum, right? So this order quantity that you have pulled, this is called implicit measure. Why? Because this is something, the summation has been applied by the Power BI itself, and this is restricted to the visualization that we have created, this tabular visualization. You can't use this order quantity into other formulas. So let's say I write some calculation wherein I want to use total quantity. Let me write it and then show it to you. Let me create one measure wherein I want to see, I want to create, let's say, total quantity 2, in which I want to do, I want to multiply each of these quantity by, let's say, 2 or 3. So I can't use this order quantity. This is a raw field. But what I can do is I can pull this total quantity 1 column. I can reference that. This total quantity 1. Why? Because this is a measure that we have created which can be referenced in other formulas, right? So we call this as explicit measure. So explicit measure is something which you can use in the, or you can reference in other formulas that can be applicable to the other visualization also. But implicit measure is something which is stuck in the visualization itself. It will not be used in some other formulas, other expressions, DAX expressions. Hence it's recommended to always create explicit measure and avoid using direct column or direct field that is there, which we call it as implicit measure. Because uh, because what happens is, in both the cases you get the same result as you are seeing over here, but in this case implicit measure, that won't be able to get referenced, and hence when you write like some complex queries wherein you want to use uh, the total quantity column, then in that case it will be difficult to use this. You won't be able to use this order quantity raw field. You have to have some measure that has been created that can be referenced, right? So explicit measure is always better when compared to implicit measure. Is it clear, Aklilu?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I have a
Okay.
question, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with regards to the implicit measure, like you know how when you showed us with that visualization, it showed that there was a summation, like it automatically
Mm-hmm,
just assumed
mm-hmm,
and did the summation for us. In the
mm-hmm.
event that we wanted to actually change it to like maybe average or minimum or maximum, is
We
that
can do
something that
it. We
okay?
can do it. You can select average and now it will start showing you average. And if you want to see if it's working same or not, let's say under total quantity, I do average just for the purpose of demonstration. If I do
Mhm.
average, what it will do, it will give me the same result. See, average is
Okay.
also same. If you round it, it will give you 2. So both are same. So you can change the aggregation function from here if you want.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll change this to some. Okay, so any questions till now?
I have a question.
Yeah,
What is
please
the
go ahead.
okay? What is the difference between new major and new quick major?
Yeah, I will cover that. So now you understand the new measure, right? Let's say we talk about quick measure, right? So as soon as you click on this, you see there's something called calculations where you see new measure, quick measure, new column, new table, all these. So we discussed new column and we discussed new measure. Quick measure. So quick measure is something in which you have few of the formulas already and the logic already written over there, and you just have to select those calculations and add it to the table. So I'll click on here and I'll show under, as soon as you click quick measure, there is something called calculation drop down, from where you can select few of the calculation. So if you see here, they have already written the DAX, the the logic has been inbuilt. If let's say I go down and I want to look into running total, right? Running total. Or I want to do some mathematical operation as addition, subtraction, and all these things. So these calculations has already been done, like the formula that we write right under DAX measure, we have written the summation or something like that, right? So those calculation have already been done over here under each of these formulas. And you just have to, what you have to do is, if you want to do running total, let's say you want to do running total, you just have to pull you just have to pull field under this. So if you want to do running total of, let's say, the total quantity, right? So you just have to drag the total quantity field under this field section and then hit enter, and the running total will automatically happen. Why? Because the running total calculation, the DAX for running total has already been written, and they have provided something called quick measure wherein we can directly select that formula. So in the quick measure, you can just drag and drop and then it will work. But try to use as minimum as possible, because what happens is, if we will start using this, right? Since running total is little bit running total, or you have multiple things over here, right? Quarter over quarter change, year over year change. So we can directly use this. But what happens is, if we start using this frequently, then we will not be able to write any of the functions, and it will be difficult for us to basically understand how everything is working, right? So in some cases you can use it because it has been given, but it's better to write all the formulas on our own, so that like we know how it is working, and everything, every small things about the DAX function and how everything works. So it's, try to avoid this quick measure thing that is already here. It will make you lazy. You will just go select, and then you will not write any DAX queries, DAX functions, not use anything, and it will be difficult to actually understand later on. So avoid using quick measure. But then they have provided some good formulas over here. You can directly select this max per category and then pull, like using which field you want to look at max. So let's say I want to look at uh, order, let's say I want to look at order quantity. Okay. So I have pulled order quantity, base value, and by category, max per category. So under category, let's say I want to look into by each product, what is the maximum order quantity, right? Let's say I pull product name under category, and then I hit enter. So see, uh, it will give me one table. It happened. Okay. So under, is it created here? Which table was selected? It would have been created over there. Max order quantity, max per product name. Okay, so returns table was selected at that point of time, so that's why it got created over here. So let's say I select this order quantity max and then pull it in here in this visualization. So see what will happen. So what it is giving me? It is giving me order quantity max per product name. So maximum order quantity that has been uh, sold in each of these product. So that is what we are seeing, 22, 24, 25, all these. So if you see here, let me actually create one visualization for you guys. Let me I pull this is the order quantity max per product name, the field that we have just created. And then I want to, let's say, look by product lookup. Okay. Let's say I want to look by product name. So what it is giving me? It is giving me that for bike stand, the maximum quantity sold is 234. Okay. For logo cap, the maximum quantity sold is 4151. So multiple instances will happen in which the bike stand will be sold, right? So the total order quantity that has happened for bike stand is the maximum order quantity that has been sold for bike stand is 234. So that is what we are seeing over here. So this, the max quantity that is there, you can create on your own also. You can directly write max function and then create max order quantity. So in this case, you don't know how it is working, what is happening, right? You just have one field you selected from there and you pulled it. So it's not recommended to have this uh, way, like use quick measure and then do it, because in this case you will not, actually you don't know like what is happening, what formula they have written, what happened here, right? So it's always better to write your formula and then pull that here so that you know like what is happening, right? And in this case, the formula that you see here, right? If I click on, let's say, uh, returns table, right? This one. So you see, this is what they have written, the complex formula. What they have done is max of AW product name, and then written sum of all these. So this is very complex, and then they write it, the expression is something in such a way that they use some uh, functions which we don't know how exactly it works, right? So it's always better to write on your own. You can always edit the name and everything, but just avoid using quick measure. Did you get it, City?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So I know like today's lecture is little bit difficult to understand, but I will just summarize whatever we have discussed so that it's easier for you guys to understand. So basically, we started with calculated measure and column. Two things you always remember. Calculated column is something which will appear in the table and it will happen row by row operation. For calculated column, row by row operation will happen. For measures, it will not appear in the table and measure is used for aggregation function. So you will see measure only in the visualization. When you pull measure in the values pane, and then you will see the measure. Okay. The second thing is implicit measure and explicit measure. Implicit measure is something created when you pull raw column, raw field into the value pane. That aggregation will happen on the backend by default, which is called as implicit measure, and it can't be used to get referenced in other formulas. While explicit measure is something that we create on our own using the DAX expression, and it can be referenced in any other formula, and hence explicit measure, we recommend to use explicit measure as much as we can. Third thing we discussed is quick measure. Quick measure is something in which there are few functions that has been inbuilt, in which all the logic and everything is written, which you can use. You just have to drag and drop the fields that you want to look into for that particular measure and it will work. But it's better to avoid because it will make you lazy. Uh, you won't be able to understand what is happening, what is going on inside the formula. So it's better always to avoid quick measure and write measures on your own, right? So these are few things, and then we will discuss in the next lecture what are the different DAX functions. But these were the important concepts of calculated column and measure, right? This was very important. So in next lecture, we will discuss like if we are creating DAX calculated column or measures, what all functions we can use, what are the different DAX functions. There are uh, date and time function, there are text functions, there are various type of logical functions, then there are statistical mathematical functions. So all those functions we will discuss, right? I will create a list of functions and then we will go over that. And then after that, once we discuss all those functions and everything, then we will use few of those functions and create calculated columns and measures. And then we will come to our visualization lecture, like how to create visualization, what are different types of charts, etc. Okay. So any question in today's lecture or anything you want to know, and I would recommend that go through this video again and try to grasp everything, try to uh, understand everything that we discuss, so then it will be easier. It's very difficult to understand for the first time since these are like big concepts. So it's better to again go back and then go through this video, understand everything and come back with the questions if you have any doubt while going through the entire session, right? But for now, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Any questions, anyone?
I'm good.
Okay. Siti, Aklilu?
No questions.
But
Clear.
you know what questions I have? I know this is not related to tonight's class or session, but I'm still trying to process in my head how to determine or to decipher between a data table or a fact table from a lookup table, because I keep thinking in some lookup tables there are some numbers as well. So if I were to be given a data set, like I don't know how I would
Okay. So
differentiate.
I will just tell you in lookup table, whichever lookup table you will see, you will have one primary key, right? That will define that table. There will be one primary key, and that primary key, what does it mean? It will be having unique values, right? It will have unique values. So in whichever table, if you have some key which is unique and it's not repeating, then and that table has uh, all the things related to, like, all the characteristics information, that is a lookup table. What I meant to say is, let's say customer lookup, right? So you have here one column which is customer key, which will uniquely help you to uniquely identify each row of this table, right? And you will get to know everything about that customer from this table. This table is all about customer, nothing else. You will not get to know anything about product or territory or product subcategory, product category, nothing. You will just get to know everything about that customer. And how you will identify that customer? Using a unique key, which is customer key, and that will uniquely define each of the rows. So this is a lookup table. What about calendar lookup? This table will only give you information about calendars, dates, year, month. So this is a lookup table. So if any one table is giving you information about a particular thing and describes everything about that particular thing, have all the characteristics, then that is a lookup table. Is it easier to understand? Like, do you have any questions?
Much easier now. And then the data set or the fact table would just have characteristics of all of the.
And when I talk about the
Okay.
fact table or data table, right? In that, what will happen? It will have all the information about the numerical values, and it will have all the unique keys to get connected to the lookup table, right? So you see, you have customer key, you have a territory key, you have date, you have product key, all those things that will be here. So mostly in fact or data table, what you will have, either you will have different types of keys which will help you to connect it to the different lookup tables, or you will have values, or you will have columns which will have numerical values, which will help you to understand about the transactions, the sales, the returns, all those things, the orders, right? It will not be dedicated or centered to a particular thing, like particular, let's say in customer or calendar, as we discussed, it's dedicated to a particular customer, like all the characteristics of that customer, like everything about the date. It will not be like that. In sales or in data table or fact table, you will have numerical values and you will have keys, so that you can create a relationship with the other lookup tables, no other information.
Okay. And
Okay.
And my question was,
Yeah, go ahead, Aklilu.
how we can separate from, raw data. One is lookup table and one is a data fact table.
How we will can you come again?
Yeah, how we can separate when we receive like a raw data. From raw data, we need to separate. Yeah, this is a lookup table. The other one is a fact table. So how we do that one? Because when on the demo, in the session you did, you have like a fact table is another side, and there is a data table on the other side. So you did that one. But when in case of when you receive like a raw data, which is doesn't separate everything, and but we need to separate our own. So how we do that one?
Yeah, sure. So if you have one data set in which you have everything, right, and you
Yeah.
want to separate it, you have to have that clarity what lookup table you want to create. Let's say you want to create a calendar table, right? So in that calendar table, everything related to date will appear. Let's say you get the data in which you have sales information, returns information, customer lookup, product lookup, everything, and you want to create lookup table, right? So in that case, you know that if you want to create lookup table, let's say customer lookup table, what all things you want to have in the customer lookup. You want to have everything about that customer. You want to have all the details about the customer. So whichever column will be given to you in that combined data set related to customer, first identify those columns and then create one table in which you will have like only those columns related to customers, right? In that way you will create that lookup table. So that clarity of mind, like what do you want to create and what all columns you want to have in that table, that is very important to create. If you know that, then it's very easier. You will just create one table and select all the columns that you want to have in that table from the combined table. You will select all those columns and have it in one separate table which you name as customer lookup table. But how to create, I think, is not difficult because you know how to create a table, how to add column, delete column, all those things. To create what to create or what to have in the lookup table is important, which you will get by practice. You, if you know that you want to create this lookup table, any particular product lookup table, and you want these 5 columns in the product lookup table which will characterize each of the product, like in the product lookup table I want product key which will define each of the product uniquely, then I want product name, product color, product price, so everything about that product. If what all things you can know about a product, if you know these are the 5 columns, 7 columns I need for this product to define this product, you, in the combined data set that has been provided, you just scroll through and see what all columns are related to the product. If you identified like these are the 5-10 columns that is related to product and you want to have it in a separate table, you just pull that columns in a separate table, name it as product lookup, and you have it, right? So it will depend on what kind of lookup table you want to create, and then the understanding of the data set that has been provided to you by any of the organization, right? Did I answer your question, Aklilu?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any more questions? Hanan, you had any question?
No, you answered my question. So I was just thinking, but
Mhm.
going back, I remember when we did the array that data set that we were working
Mhm.
with, the international sales data set.
Mhm.
I don't remember you creating a lookup table, and so this is why this is a little bit of a newer concept for me.
Yeah,
But
exactly. So because of the time constraint and everything, we had not done a lot of things, right? Like we had used, in fact, the quick measure also. But
yeah,
right now, I am telling that not to use that because, like, when you have like proper time and you want to create a proper dashboard, these are the approach that you should follow, right?
okay,
These are the best practices that we should do.
okay. So like you said, I think practice makes perfect. We just have to practice, and
Yeah.
yeah, we'll probably get better at it.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
No problem. So I think for today's class, we are good, right? We'll again connect tomorrow. I'll have one class for you guys tomorrow, right? On Saturday for you, right? And I'll discuss all the DAX functions and everything that we couldn't cover today. And yeah, come back with any questions you have on this lecture. And I have shared the questions, yeah, those questions and all the data sets you guys have. So if you need anything else, you can tell me.
Well, so thank you so much, Miha.
No problem. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining. We'll meet tomorrow
Thank
again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Good night.
Good night,
Have a
everyone.
good day.
Bye.